Hi there, everyone. My name is Tom Levine. I'm Cornerstone's commissions and technical specialist, as well as tech guru. And today we're going to be going through handling common and uncommon computer errors and when you should feel like you need to call an expert and when you shouldn't. A lot of the IT industry is knowing what to say, knowing how to answer questions, and knowing when someone might have a technical issue or when someone might actually just need to double check some connections on the back of their computer. So today we're going to kind of try to go through a lot of that and give people a general idea of, what to expect when they call a technical support line, what sort of errors they really should be calling for, and maybe how to handle a few of the errors on your own. There's a lot of computer work that you can really do yourself if you just sort of understand a little bit more of what's going on. So we're going to get into that today. That being said, we do have a few announcements first involving housekeeping. If you have a question, please feel free to put it in the questions box or in the chat box. I'll be looking at these throughout the presentation and seeing if there's anything of note that I need to just go over in the moment. But if not, please feel free to ask any questions. This one and our next webinar are the ones where if you really have a question, please feel free to ask. This is kind of tougher stuff if you're not much of a tech ed. So if you need to, ask anything, please feel free. If I don't answer it at the moment, I will likely answer it at the end of the video. Also, please feel free to connect with us directly if you don't feel comfortable asking a question in this webinar, but you feel like you have something you'd like to follow up on, please feel free to email me directly at tlevine@crnstone.com or by giving me a call at the number on your screen. Additionally, you can go to the website and find all of our contact information there. We have a Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and our marketing is pretty spot on. So if you're interested in following us, please do. Also, feel free to sign up for the Refer an Agent program and earn some extra money. If you refer an agent to us and they sign up a policy, then you will get a $250 bonus if they submit a referral in a 6-month period of joining. So please feel free to do that. And also our marketing consultation program. We're offering a full service marketing program. In-house marketing expert, Jess Larkin, will take a closer look at your existing marketing strategies and resources and help you establish realistic and measurable goals and objectives for your brand. She'll also help you create a step-by-step plan to help you optimize your brand and take it to the next level. Some of the services offered are brand audit, social media management, print marketing, email marketing, onboarding kits, and quite a bit more actually. And also all brokers can participate in this program and receive a free brand evaluation workbook. Please contact Jess Larkin today for pricing and additional information. Her information is there on the screen, but it's jlarkin@crnstone.com. And last announcement for the day, there will be another webinar on July 27th, and it is for you for sure. We'll be going in depth on frequently asked questions that I get personally, along with any other questions that our frequent viewers had or have. So if you have any nagging tech questions that you just haven't felt like I've covered or maybe need a little bit more follow-up on, please submit it to tlevine@crnstone.com with the subject Tech Tuesday Questions in the subject line, and I will be sure to answer that on July 27th. Or if it's a quick one, I'll just email you back. So that being said, today we're handling computer errors, and there are a lot of different errors that a computer can encounter. Obviously, we can't solve all of them ourselves, but a lot of common errors are pretty easy solutions or have pretty easy solutions that you can implement yourself. A lot of the trouble with kind of fixing your own computer comes from admin access. And the reason we have that is because we don't want people mucking about where they shouldn't be on a computer. But there are things you can address even without admin access, and that's some of what we're trying to cover today. We'll also be covering some other issues. So if you have like a personal computer that you've been having issues on that isn't managed by your full company as a whole, we should be able to help you out with that as well. First, I'm going to just cover some general troubleshooting tips. These are basically 90% of the issues we encounter in IT is a computer won't turn on or a monitor is off, and people are having trouble getting their device working. And these 5 little tips tend to fix every single one of those problems. First, have you tried turning it off and on again? This is kind of the default answer for almost any IT person, and it's the first thing they tend to ask you. But there is a reason for it, and I don't want to just tell you to do it. So the reason for that is because a lot of computers like us get tired over time. The longer a computer is on, the less likely it's more up to date, the more patches it might need to update its code. A lot of systems also have runtime like monitors built in, and after a certain amount of time it will slow down, it'll try to save memory space, it'll have a lot in its cache, all those sort of things. So the reason we ask you to turn it off and on again is that maybe resetting one of those issues will fix it. And even though we could manually go in and try to fix all of those things, just turning things off and on again does all of those things. So that's why we ask, and that's why it's the first recommended thing. If you have an issue on your computer, that's what I'd recommend doing, unless it's an issue when you turn it on, but we'll be covering that here shortly. Additionally, you'll want to make sure everything is plugged in. If you go to hit a button on your computer, go to turn it on, and you're not even getting a little blinking light, I'm gonna move our webcam here to show you. But when we turn on our computers here, we get those little blinking lights at the front, and those are power monitors. Those, there we go. Those power monitors are actually there to tell you if you've plugged everything in and if the computer is getting power. If you hit the power button repeatedly on your computer and nothing is coming on or blinking or doing anything like that, the first thing I would do is check the power plug on your computer. Make sure it's plugged in the back, which is this big thick plug back here. That plug also plugs into the power cable, which is like your surge protector as well. And that surge protector normally is plugged into the wall. So if everything there is plugged in, you hit the button and you don't see a power light, that's when you might want to call someone in IT and say, hey, my computer isn't turning on. I know it's not the outlet. I know it's not the power brick. And I know it's not the, actual computer's power, like I don't know what's going on. And then they'd probably come up, take a look at your computer, and they might need to replace it or change a part. Additionally, if you're trying to connect to like a printer or something and it's misbehaving, you might want to set that device as default. And we are going to go in depth on how to do that here at the end of the presentation. I'm not going to do that now, but it is one of those things I'd recommend doing, and we will get into that here shortly. Additionally, and this is just sort of the last thing, if you're having internet troubles, like you're opening up an internet browser and you just see no connection or some sort of general error like that, 9 times out of 10, it's because your computer isn't connected to the internet. A lot of desktop computers, which is what I'm using, they're those big brick-like things on your desk versus like a laptop or something like that, don't actually have the ability to use Wi-Fi. Those you can tell by, actually, we might as well go ahead and do this now. I'm gonna go ahead and escape that and show you real quick this little connection option down here. I'm gonna circle it on your screen as well, real quick. It's right down here. That's the little speaker icon that I've circled, but the one just to the left of it, I'm gonna erase all drawings real quick, is your internet connection. If I click on that, it has a little wire there and it says cornerstone.com connected. The cornerstone.com is our server. It's how we connect out to the internet here. But that's generally a way you can tell if you're actually connected to an internet service. If you don't see anything that says connected down there, you're not connected to the internet and you won't be able to do any web browsing. As far as setting up a default device is concerned, I'm just going to show you as well real quick. And if I'm going too fast, please feel free to comment in the chat and let me know. All I'm going to do is hit the Windows icon, and I'm going to type in devices. And we get device security, Bluetooth and other device settings, and privacy settings for other devices down here in settings. What we're going to do is hit Bluetooth and other device settings. And that will open up this other devices sort of window. Most of the time you could find Bluetooth devices where it's labeled on the left with Bluetooth devices. Then under that, we have printers and scanners. And if you can see, this Ryco printer is set to the default. That's our printer here in the office upstairs. If I wanted to change it to the mailroom printer, I could right-click or click on this drop-down, go to Manage, and just to do that again real quick, I'm going to go back into Devices, Bluetooth and other device settings, printers and scanners, choose a printer, and hit Manage. If I then click this Set as Default option, anything I print here will then automatically redirect to the printer that is on your screen. And that will typically help if it's a printer that's not printing inappropriately. 9 times out of 10, that tends to solve all of your printer problems. So back into the presentation. Those are sort of my general IT advice things. Those are all things you can do yourself before having to call IT to see if you really need to contact IT. And typically that's what everyone's familiar with. That being said, there are some additional problems that you might need to call IT over and or reach out to your local computer store over. And that's what, I'm here to kind of help you figure out. The first problem is it won't turn on. We already covered some of these things, but assuming you've checked all the plugs, you know everything's plugged in, then you might have trouble if you try to turn it on and everything's black. The first thing to check is a switch, actually, after that. And I'm going to highlight real quick where that switch is on this mock power supply, right over here. I've highlighted it in yellow, and I'm also going to circle it with my pen right over here. That is a power button or a toggle switch. And those are there as fail-safes in a lot of power supplies. Our computers here at Cornerstone don't have these, but a lot of desktops nowadays do. And they're there just in case you need to physically reset your computer. A lot of times, and I've been guilty of this too, people will have something misbehaving on their computer and need to turn it off and on, but everything's frozen and they don't know what to do. And they go to unplug their computer from the wall, which can cause problems. That switch is there so you don't have to. 9 times out of 10, if you have everything plugged in, you know the socket's working, you know the computer should be getting power and nothing's turning on. You just need to flip that toggle switch on the back, and that will restore power to your device. 9 times out of 10, that's all you need to do after you make sure it's plugged in and there's power coming from the wall. However, if that doesn't work and nothing else has worked, 9 times out of 10, it's a bad power supply. This device that I've got in the screen here is a power supply. And what that does is it transforms the power that's coming from your wall into power that your computer can actually use. In America here, we use alternating current, AC. Computers need DC in order to work, direct current. The difference is power in AC moves back and forth. Power from this little box here goes in one direction, straight. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, I'm not going to get too deep into it. But basically, that's what this thing does. If it's not working properly, then power is not getting to your device, and that's why it's not working. So 9 times out of 10, you just need to replace it. If you are particularly interested in doing so, this isn't something that I think a professional needs to do. All you need to do is open up the side of your computer case, unscrew your power supply, unplug all of that mess of cables that I have particularly thrown away back here, get a new one, plug them in exactly where they were before with the exact same looking plugs, and then screw it back on, put your case back on, plug it all in, and power it up and see if it works. That said, that's only if you have a personal computer and only if it is one of these desktops. Also, if you have a Mac, you cannot do this. So that's just one of the things that you have to go back into the technicians for. Apple has a long history of not letting users into their products, and that's less of an issue than people tend to think. A lot of people don't have the technical training or the ability to really know what's going on inside their computers. So Apple's stance is, why let anyone in? You have to go through a lot of certifications, and Apple has some proprietary screws that they use to keep people out. So if you have a Mac, sorry. If you have a laptop, you really shouldn't get into this part of it, but there is a solution, and we'll be going over it after our next slide if you're using a laptop. If you're using one, chances are your battery's dead, and we'll get into that. But first off, it won't turn on. I just wanted to show real quick some of the different power supplies computers use. On the left here, we have a very standard power supply with all of the different cable connectors showing. In the middle here, we have that image that I had up before, just to sort of show you a better view of the toggle switch and the little plug back here. And lastly, we had the human power supply coffee. That is just a personal preference. If you're up to tea, good for you. But either way, these connectors, and I will circle each one as I kind of talk about them back here, correspond to different parts of your motherboard and different parts of your computer. This 4-pin connector down here is called a 4-pin connector because there are 4 little ribbons coming to it. This is less commonly used now, but it's actually a power cable used to power like CD drives and things of that nature. Some of them also use SATA power cables, which is this black one back here. And if you've ever heard the term SATA before, it's just a connection. It looks like a little L, and all it does is supply power to your device or transfers data. No need to be scared of it. This really long white connector here typically plugs into the motherboard, and that powers all parts of the device typically. It's the real thick one, and it powers not only the individual motherboard, but a lot of other subsidiary parts that get plugged into the motherboard. So that one's important. Also, this little 4-pin connector right here is your CPU. And that's about it as far as different plugs you need to know. The square plug goes into the square hole on the motherboard. The long plug goes into the long hole. That's literally all it is as far as replacing one of these things. So you don't need to be an expert, but if you feel uncomfortable with it, I'd understand. So I just wanted to show everyone here those different plugs so that you had a general idea of what your IT person is doing when they say, I need to replace your power supply. Typically, if you're replacing it yourself, power supplies can run for desktop computers between $80 and about $150, depending on what kind of power supply you're trying to get. Most of the time, these sort of office power supplies run very low. A power supply replacement shouldn't run you more than $300 at the most. And that's with diagnosis and full replacement. At least that's my opinion. So if you take your computer into someone and they try to say, oh, it was your dead power supply, we need like $1,000, that's wrong. I would take it somewhere else. Additionally, if you're using a laptop and nothing is turning on, typically that means you either have a bad power brick, so the little plug that goes from the, the actual outlet to your computer, or you have a bad battery. And 9 times out of 10, when you're shopping for batteries, people don't really know what to look for. This isn't a part that you actually even need to call IT over. Typically, it's just a little battery. If you call IT, they'll replace it for you. But if it's a personal computer, these are incredibly easy to replace. You don't even need to open up the device typically, unless it's a Mac, in which case you'll have to take it to AppleCare. But this is just sort of a general Samsung replacement battery. And you'll see, like, if you flip over your laptop, there is a battery pack on the bottom that has a little toggle switch on it. It'll be kind of rough, and if you move it, then you'll see a battery pop out. And then you can just put it back in by pushing, and that's all you need to do to replace it. You can find these things on Amazon. They're no more than 80 bucks. There are a few things you need to look at, however, on your old battery to find a suitable replacement. First is the model number. This one is the BC09 model. And I know, because I've personally replaced these, that they come as the default product for a lot of HPs. HP batteries tend to fail pretty easily just because they cheap out on the original versions. And I've had to replace quite a bit. Oh, I was told my sound just went out. Is anyone else having issues? If you can hear me, please type in the box and let me know. I'm getting the sound notification here on my end, so I just want to make sure everyone's good. Okay, it looks like we're actually okay and fine, so I'm going to keep going. Thank you very much for all of your feedback and letting me know. I appreciate it. Anyway, when shopping for a battery, 9 times out of 10, you won't be able to find this model number. That's because this model is direct from the manufacturer, and it comes with the exact product. However, there are replacement batteries available. As you can see with the little circle icon, these are replacement model numbers. And if you search for those model numbers, they're exactly the same thing. The little plugs here on the end might be slightly different shaped, but they'll hold all the same in most of your devices. And the only thing I'd make sure about when you're buying these is that the model number is one of these three, the model or the replace number, and additionally, that the DC voltage is the same. This DC voltage is 11.1 volts. If you put any other type of battery in there, anything like a 12 volt or a 13 volt, or maybe even like a 6 volt if you can find it in those model numbers, then your computer will likely not power on at all. And the reason for that is it needs to keep that constant flow of power, and it needs to be at exactly the right voltage for everything to work. The other thing, if you get a little picky, is the amperage. The amperage is that number that's coming up after the voltage. And all that tells it is, well, voltage is about how, how much power the current has in it. Amperage is about how fast the current can go from the battery. If you get really picky, you want something that's either higher than this total number here, or exactly that number there. I prefer exactly. What that does is it keeps everything consistent between the battery pack that you've bought and the battery pack you're looking at. To keep it simple, so long as all the numbers match, you're going to be fine. That being said, there is another common computer problem, no matter what type of thing you're using. First is that the computer is on and the screen is blank. That means that the power indicator that I showed you earlier is on. That little light is on, but the screen is blank. There are a few different things that could be going on, so we're going to cover all of the easy checks first. First, if your screen's blank, check the power cable to the monitor. Just like I showed you with the computer itself, the monitor as well has one of those power plugs. I believe it is this one right here for these screens. Now, these power plugs operate exactly the same way, and they plug in just back there at the very back of your screen. Those are pretty fun actually to mess with because a lot of them are loose by default. They want to be sure that they can be plugged in and pulled out and plugged in and pulled out. So because of that, things tend to get a little loose. You might want to jiggle the cable a little bit, push it near the end, make sure it's plugged in all the way. And if your screen still doesn't turn on, then the next thing to check is the cable running from your monitor to the computer itself. This cable could be a number of different types, and most people are familiar with HDMI cables. Those are the things that you plug from a device into your TV. And those are little flat cables. They've got little kind of dips on one end and they're flat on the other. Those things most people are familiar with. The other types of cables are, blue cables that have little screws on them and white cables that have screws on them as well. If you see one going from your monitor to your desktop, then that could also be the problem. You just want to push on those, make sure they're fully in. And if that doesn't work, check to see if you have a similarly colored port on the back of your computer. We don't really have them here, which makes it a little harder to show. But a lot of times if you unscrew one of the cables from the back and pull it out, then you will be able to see the different type of plug that's on it. And if you have another one of the same type, just plug it into that one and see if it works. 9 times out of 10, it's just a faulty connection, and that's all you need to do to get it to work. So that's what I'd recommend, is trying a different port. If you have a different type of cable that can work as well, maybe swap that cable out. That'll work pretty well as well typically, and that'll solve your problem. But all of that assumes one thing. When your computer turns on, your screen doesn't light up, and there's no beeping from your computer itself. If there is beeping from your computer when you turn it on, that's a much more serious issue, and then you'll want to call IT immediately. Those beeps that you hear from your computer when it turns on, those are error codes that the motherboard is putting out. And the motherboard is sort of like the connecting piece to everything. I'll show you a full diagram of it at the very, very end. But what that is, realistically, is a notice to you that your computer is unhealthy and something is seriously wrong. That means that you'll need to get into the guts of the computer to get it fixed, and that's when you absolutely need to call IT. So one of the other common issues is what happens if a computer freezes. This is one that really frustrates people because a lot of times they don't know what to do and they don't know how to get out of things. My first thing that I'd say is if your computer's just jittery, it might be thinking really hard about something. Wait 2 to 3 minutes. If nothing happens, then wiggle your mouse back and forth a few times. If nothing happens after you do that, then you would need to press Control, Alt, and Delete. There's going to be a different key sequence on Mac. I believe it's Control, Home, Delete, but about the same thing. What it does is that opens up your task manager. And 9 times out of 10, this will either stop the freeze or it'll show you what program is misbehaving. And when I say that, I mean it'll look something like this. This is sort of a screenshot of a task manager, and I'll be able to open it up here and closer to the end of the presentation if you have any questions related to it. But what the task manager is it sort of shows you what your computer's working on. It shows you what you have open, and it will show you everything that's going on with your computer. This is actually running very healthy, so it's not a good example, but it's hard to get a screenshot of a task manager view when your computer's already kind of overloading. So this is just a good sample. When you open it up, it might show you a simplified view. And in order to do this next step, you're going to have to click on that little arrow key that I have highlighted that says fewer details currently, but will say more details or expand, something like that. When you open it up, you'll see a bunch of programs listed. And then on your right, it'll tell you how much CPU usage that program's taking up, how much memory that computer's task is taking up, and a few other things like disk space and network kind of bandwidth. Those you don't really need to care about. What I will say is if you see a program while your computer is kind of glitching out, and you see a number like 50 to 80 to 90 or 100 up here in this CPU area, that means a program is responsible for your computer freeze, not the computer itself. And what you'll need to do is you'll need to click it and highlight it like I have my Firefox selected. Sorry, muscle memory there. Let's go back real quick. And then you will click End Task. And End Task is located here in the bottom right-hand corner of your task manager. What that does when you click End Task is it just stops the program in its tracks entirely. You might see a pop-up window when you do this that'll say something like, are you sure you want to end task? And just say yes, and 9 times out of 10, that'll stop your computer from being jittery. If you can't even get this to work, however, and everything's just completely frozen, you can't get anything to respond, you're gonna wanna turn your computer on and off again. There are 3 different things you want to do, and I'm only showing 2 on my screen. The first is to hold your power button on your computer. If you were able to open up your task manager, then you should do it this way. And what it'll do is it'll bring you to that sort of same home menu that you got to with Control-Alt-Delete, and it will say, are you sure you want to turn off your computer, or turn off your computer as an option. Then click Turn Off, and it'll immediately start your computer shutting down. Any unsaved work you have at this point will likely be lost, but you should be able to recover it. In any case, you'll need to just, as pop-ups occur that say, we can't shut down because of this, just say end task, end task, end task. And as you go through it, it will stop all the misbehaving programs, shut your computer down safely, and then you can just turn it back on, start up like you were, and reopen all of the files that you might have intended to save from Windows or from Office. If that doesn't work, then you're going to go to that toggle switch on the power supply, like I said. Then you're going to just hardcore flip it to the other option. Wait at least 10 seconds. I recommend 20 to 30, and then turn it back on. You'll go to a recovery screen, which will also be shown here in 2 slides, I believe. And that recovery screen will tell you how you want to start your computer. Typically, either starting your computer normally or starting your computer in safe mode is what you'll want to do. Additionally, if you don't have that toggle on the back, you'll need to unplug your computer. And I've made this mistake once or twice before, where when you go to unplug your computer, you don't really want to bend all the way over or get on the floor to unplug it. So you just pull the power cable out of the socket on the back of your computer. That's very wrong. Do not do that ever. The reason is because in a lot of cheaper power supplies, which are oftentimes what we have in workstations, that will cause a short circuit and fry not only the board, but maybe a bit of your memory. What you'll want to do is you'll want to go under your desk to where your cable is plugged into the wall, and that's where you want to unplug things. What I found is that's 9 times out of 10 a lot safer than unplugging it where your computer is. But those are my recommendations. Additionally, what if you have abnormally functioning software? That's sort of what we covered ahead, sort of like if your computer freezes, but it's a little different. If you have software that isn't quite functioning right, a lot of times this will be kind of what happens in Excel. You open up a window of Excel and you won't see any of the tabs at the bottom that tell you like sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, any of that information, and you won't be able to go back and forth between sheets. 9 times out of 10, the program opened weird. You just need to close it, reopen it, and that will solve your problem. All programs really are stored memory, 1s and 0s. Sometimes those 1s and 0s get flipped and they give you weird errors. That's kind of what causes abnormally functioning software. But I have a program on my home computer that was really functioning badly. What it would do is it would actually cause my computer to go into a power saving mode and fully shut down. This is something that if you work in an office, you need to call IT to get to do, because you need admin permission in order to remove a program and reinstall it. So you will need to call IT. But if you're working from a computer at home and you're seeing a program that's just acting strange or is really weird, what's likely going on is your program was installed badly. It was installed maybe improperly, or it had a little bit of a weird coding issue when it started getting onto your computer. The way to fix this is to just remove it and reinstall it. 9 times out of 10, that'll solve your problem. What you need to do is, well, first the error checks. See if it's something that you really can't just get around with by, restarting your program. Do it a few times. If you keep seeing the issue, then you'll need to reinstall. Some problems could be if your program is shutting down randomly or giving you error windows. Like randomly, the program will just disappear and say, "We have encountered an error." Or maybe you can't interact with the menus at all. You can't click on those tabs at the bottom. If you click on File, maybe nothing pops up, those sorts of things. Also, maybe your program won't even open when you click on the icons, or it won't even start up at all. Or maybe it causes your computer to crash when it's in use. That could also be another thing that happens. This is when you'd want to take this step. All you need to do is actually just uninstall the program. What you're going to do is you're going to hit the Windows icon in the bottom left-hand side of your screen and go to Program. Then hit Add or Select or Remove Programs, and then Uninstall. Once you uninstall fully, you just click through all the little windows that pop up. You just reinstall it from however you installed the program. This could be a disk. This could be a little USB plug. It could also just be a downloaded kind of thing, and you just need to double click on the reinstallation app. And real quick, I will show you how to get to here directly. What you do is you click on the little Windows icon and then type program. The first thing that pops up on my screen, because I always search for it, is Add or Remove Programs, but you're looking for the little gear icon right over here that looks about right. And then you'll just click on it. That opens up your Apps and Features window. And if I scroll through here, we've got a lot of programs that are available. A lot of this is stuff that you don't really need to concern yourself with or know what it is. But this is also how you view all of the programs that are installed on your computer. If you want to uninstall something, say this little sticky notes app, you just click on it and hit uninstall. That'll start the uninstall process. And then once you plug in or go to re-download a program, you just download it, double click on the icon that you downloaded or started, and it'll walk you through how to put it into your computer yourself. If you're on a home computer, those are all the steps you'd really need to take. But that's how you would go about it. The final program issue is the same one that I mentioned earlier. Going to that black screen, what'll happen if you go into a repair configuration. This is what it looks like if Windows won't boot. This is not really a great thing, and it means that something very bad has happened to the computer. Either you've had a program that completely shut down your computer went into power save mode, or maybe your computer just has been having a bunch of issues. Those are the only times you should really see these two screens. And you could have also seen it if you unplugged your computer mid-operation. So one of those troubleshooting steps we mentioned before, if it's really frozen. It's kind of common to interact with these once or twice on your own, and it's nothing you should be excessively afraid of unless you've had some real issues before you've seen this screen. It's a generic crash and boot screen, and it's typically what a lot of users encounter where they go, "Oh, I don't know what's going on. I need an expert," when a lot of times they really don't need one. 9 times out of 10, just click Use the last good configuration. You may need to use your arrow keys to go up and down to that option, and when it's highlighted, hit Enter on your key keyboard, and that'll be how it works. Another thing you can do is enter safe mode. Safe mode completely cuts off the computer from the outside. No networking, no command prompts, no nothing. It just lets you interact with the computer directly the normal way you would without any of those services. Once you're satisfied that your computer is working fully, you can turn it off, turn it back on again, and it should function normally. Additionally, you could see this screen by enable boot logging, enable all of that stuff. You don't really need to concern yourself with that. 9 times out of 10, safe mode, last known good configuration. If you see this screen, those are the only options you need to click. I wouldn't even bother contacting your IT department if you see a screen like this, unless you've had a lot of other issues before you start it up. But you can also see this screen if Windows won't boot properly. You'd really more likely see the screen on your right. What that does is it tells you that something is wrong with your operating system. And a lot of times people will try to reach out to IT directly to contact this issue. And if you work for a company, that's the best option you've got. However, if you're on your own and you're trying to solve this problem yourself, it's actually pretty easy. If you've done some work yourself on it. The first thing you need to do is try the automatic repair. It'll normally prompt you to try this first, and you just hit yes, and it'll try to repair it automatically. This works for a majority of the issues, but sometimes it won't, and then you'll see the screen that's actually displayed right up there on your left. It'll say advanced options, try other options to repair your computer, shut down or turn off. It'll, log some sort of text file. That's fine and dandy for computer engineers, but not really for us. You'll need to shut down from here. And then if you had to install Windows yourself, grab your boot disk. If you didn't try it or if you bought from someone, then you're going to need to contact the manufacturer. And they may be able to send you a medium to do this, or 9 times out of 10, they'll tell you it's covered by warranty, have you send it back in, and they'll fix it for you. This can take up to 2 weeks, probably 2 weeks or a month. And if it's any good reputable company, they'll provide you with a replacement computer. But if you installed Windows on your own and you had your own installation medium, be it a disk or a USB, more than likely, just go ahead and pop that into your USB port and hit the power icon on your computer. That'll hopefully boot it up directly, and you'll see like repair my installation from a new Windows menu. Hit recovery, choose a drive to recover. 9 times out of 10, there will only be one, and then just hope it works. For both of these options, there's no guarantee, however, that your data will be safe. And if your data is, just saved there and it's not backed up, that's a problem. It's why we say you should probably back up all of your information. But if all you really want is your data, 9 times out of 10, it's probably okay. Even with a disk that won't really start up, chances are someone will be able to recover it. The problem comes in if you are encrypting your computer, which if you're in insurance, it should be. Just bring your encryption service in, have it noted down, talk to your IT professional and let them know what type of encryption you're using on your drive. They'll probably be able to recover your data, but there's no guarantee. That's why we recommend having some sort of backup information or some sort of computer backup. If you don't use a cloud backup system like Carbonite, then you might want to use a solid backup drive. And those look a little something like what's on the right. This icon on the right here is a USB 3.0 external hard drive, and it's also what I'd recommend using if your computer is a little slow. If it's slow, there are a few different things you can do. First, you can try to defragment your hard drive. What you'll do is you'll go to your File Explorer, right-click on the disk drive, and hit defrag. Or you will search defrag in your Windows menu that I've been typing in a few times and hit open wizard. Then you'll click optimize and that will do it. I'll actually show you how to do this real quick right now. If you hit your Windows icon and just type DEFRAG, click it. then you should be able to optimize a drive. Click on one of them and then hit optimize over here. And that will completely clean up the hard drive, and it might actually get you a bit of extra speed. Additionally, you can set this up to automatically do it. This one says drives are being optimized automatically weekly, but realistically, this computer is turned off quite a bit, so it hasn't had the chance to actually do that. We can hit change settings there, but we have to actually be an admin in order to do that. So that's something you would also need to contact your IT support about if you don't have admin priority or privilege. But if you're using your home computer, you just click on change settings there, and then you can click optimize weekly, and it'll optimize once a week. If your computer is running slow as well, you might want to check the local disk total data storage. If it's mostly full or in the red, then you might just want to get an external hard drive, load things onto that. It's as simple as using a USB drive, and you just plug one end into the drive here, another end this USB into your computer. It'll pop up as a USB drive, and then you just drag and drop your files over. You can back up all your information there, then unplug it from your computer, delete what you've got left, and it should free up some space and help your computer run faster. Additionally, you can check your RAM amount. And RAM, I'm going to show you some images of it on the next screen, but it's pretty cheap and easy to replace. Same sort of price kind of thing for installation. RAM is typically around $200 for a desktop like this when you're looking to upgrade. And if your computer has anything below 16 gigs on it, can cause a problem with a lot of modern day programs. It's really easy to replace if you don't mind opening a case. But if you do, and I understand it, if you want to try to contact an expert about replacing this sort of a part, then you might want to, call them. They shouldn't charge you more than $400 if you're trying to get it replaced. That's because RAM probably costs around $200 for them, maybe lower, and just installing it's pretty easy. One other bonus tip, however, is if you're slow on startup, is to check your startup apps. For replacing RAM, all they got to do is remove it from this slot, pop it back in. It's literally that easy. Just sort of wanted to show you what they're actually doing when they say they're replacing RAM, so you understand what sort of a charge it really is coming from. And before we get into that, which is slowing internet connections, I just want to show you real quick how you would see what your startup programs are. What you're going to do is you're going to click your Windows icon, go to STARTUP, Startup Apps, and click on it. All of these icons here that are on are all of the programs that automatically start up when I turn on this computer. We've got WebEx, GoToMeeting, Microsoft Teams, OneDrive, a whole lot of things. And what that does is it actually impacts how quickly my computer gets working. If you turn on your computer and it's really slow at first, but then it gets fast, this is probably the problem that you're encountering. All you got to do to fix this is click the little icon there, turn it off, and you're done. Sometimes your computer will, say, oh, you're going to need to contact someone in your organization to turn it off, like I did there with that little program thing. That's something you'd need to contact IT support about because they have the admin access. If I can, I'll just turn off some more of these to show you how easy it is. And now when I turn on this computer, none of these things should start up automatically, and it should start up a little bit faster. That's just one of the things I'd recommend. And only two more things, I promise. First, slow and dropped internet connections. If you're using a wired connection, which is that cable physically plugged into the back of your computer, we covered this in our networking webinar, so I'd recommend going back and watching that if you have some other issues, but is what type of cable you're using. If you're using a Cat5 cable, you might want to upgrade to a Cat5e or a Cat6. They'll say sort of on the side of the wire what sort of category of cable it is. And all that means is, what kind of quality the cable is that you're using. 5E is more than fine typically, but if you're trying to get a really fast connection, you might want to use a Cat 6. If there are any visible kinks in the wire that's plugged in, then those sort of kinks might also be impacting your internet speed. It could mean that the cable is cut somewhere inside of the wire itself, and then you may need to replace the wire. Additionally, you might want to check what else is going over your connection. If you and about 5 other people are trying to connect to your home Wi-Fi, that causes issues. And same sort of thing with businesses. If you've got a lot of different people, you may need to look up, into upgrading your infrastructure. You also might want to check your router and see what it's rated for versus what you're paying for. If you've got questions on that, please see our Tech Tuesday from June 1st. All of our Tech Tuesdays are available on our library, and I will walk through where that is here in a minute. But if you're on our website, just go to our webinar section, and you'll be able to get into our recordings. Also, if you're using Wi-Fi, you could be getting interference from walls or other structures. Try to removing any sort of metal caging or metal from around where your router is, or metal walls from between where you and the router is. You might want to put another router a little bit closer to you, even if you've got a lot of metal sort of in between you and your router, because Wi-Fi signal gets interfered with from metal. You might also need a new networking card in your computer if you're sure it's not anything on your network, and that's something you would need to contact your IT support about, especially because those are a little more difficult to replace. The final little troubleshooting thing that I'm going to cover is overheating, and that's partly because it's easy to prevent on your end, but also because it can cause a lot of other problems if left untreated. You'll typically see a startup screen like this. Thermal shutdown occurred, or the system has detected that a cooling fan is not operating correctly. Normally, what you'll see is your computer starts to turn on just fine, but then turns off pretty quick. Also, it could be that there are no sounds coming from your computer case other than spinning or grinding and beeping. Also, you could see one of those error codes that's up on your screen. The simple way to know if it's probably something like this is to look at the fans that are in your computer. A lot of times it'll be sort of a desktop computer like the one I'm using. There will be little vents here on the front. Those vents are for air intake, and you should be able to see some of those slats real quick, just from that little overview that I gave you right there. Those slats are for air intake, and there are little fans that are behind there. You want to make sure that those are clear and operating normally in order to make sure your computer doesn't overheat. All you need is a can of air, like the one that's on the left. They cost normally $30 to $40, depending on the pack that you get and how big they are, but $3 can from the hardware store down the street should do the trick. What you'll want to do is you'll just want to put the little nozzle in there and spray it all over the inside little intake vents that you saw there. Once you do that, make sure all the dust is cleared away. You could probably start it up again and be just fine. The only other problem could be if a fan physically isn't spinning. And this is another one where if you feel comfortable getting into the case of your computer, you'll want to hire a professional to replace it. But it really should not cost you much at all, unless it's a fan that's physically attached to your CPU, which we'll discuss here in a moment. As far as laptops are concerned, they also have these sorts of vents, and you'll just get some of the canned air, clear the gunk out of the sides and out of the bottom vents if you have any. Make sure that they aren't obstructed, and you'll be fine. Cooling pads likely won't work for this kind of an error on a laptop as well, and you do need to go to a shop or specialist for that kind of an issue. The only thing I will say about that for laptops is cooling pads that are used typically can have an impact on performance. If you've noticed your laptop is running a bit slow and it gets really hot, then those cooling pads will make an impact. But if you're having issues even turning it on, then those cooling pads won't help at all. So the reason I'm showing you these PC components is sort of to show you the difference in what type of fans There's a front panel fan, which is something like right here on this little display, or something like what's in this little back area right back here, that little sliver, or is kind of obstructed by this little shroud on this case. What those do is they move air around within your computer case. So air goes, through the actual memory here and up through the case to get absorbed by this little fan. Or sorry, I was pointing, but air on this case on the left will go in this way and up through the case and out this way. As you can see, there's another fan here, and that's to keep the computer cool, the CPU. That's the thinky bits of your computer. Air in this case follows basically the same flow pattern. The only difference is this one has a graphics card in it, but yours likely won't if it's just a standard workstation. Where it gets a little pricey to replace fans is when one of these things go bad, right in here. These things are actually fans that are physically connected to heat sinks. And what they do is they make sure that your computer doesn't overheat. When one of these fans goes bad, you probably will need to replace the entire heatsink along with the fan itself, and those can get a little more expensive. When you're replacing one of these, it might run you anywhere between, $400 to $600 for a full replacement. The parts are a little bit more expensive. If it's just replacing a general fan from within your computer, don't pay someone more than 50 to 60 bucks. Those fans are pretty cheap. They're easy to come by, and unless you're looking for something really high performance, they shouldn't cost you a lot. All you got to do is unscrew one of them, screw it back in, and plug it back into your motherboard, which is this bottom board piece right in here, in the exact same spot that the old one was plugged into. So pretty easy stuff. If you're comfortable with things like, square peg goes in square hole, it's pretty much that easy. And I know it sounds like I'm oversimplifying it, but it's really not. It's literally that simple, so long as you know where to plug everything in. And that's why I say you shouldn't pay someone more than, 50 bucks to replace one of those case fans. A lot of times places will do it for free too. But either way, that's been our Tech Tuesday on general, troubleshooting for computers. If you have any questions for things that I haven't covered in this video, or that you think, you might want to know about just with computers or how to handle these problems, please go ahead and reach out to me. Like I said, our webinar next time in 2 weeks is going to be covering a whole bunch of different types of topics and FAQs. If you've got a question, feel free to ask it then, or feel free to ask it now if it pertains to troubleshooting or other general computer errors that you've got right now. If you want me to go in depth, then I will as well. So if you have any questions that you need more than a brief answer to, please feel free to submit them to me. Genuinely, I'm happy to help. My email is tlevine@crunstone.com, and please include the subject line Tech Tuesday questions when you do. Also, if you have a question that you don't feel comfortable asking then, or that you just don't feel comfortable asking now, please feel free to reach out to me directly. My phone number is there on the screen, same email address. I am always happy to help. So thank you. That is our Tech Tuesday on general troubleshooting. I know we got a bit into the weeds, but if you have any questions or you have any errors that I haven't covered yet, please feel free to let me know. I will be available for the next few minutes. So thank you and have a great day.